You're running full speed, but the markets are faster. Quasar Markets Live brings the world's top financial minds to you. Everything you need to know in one place. Learn from elite educators and gain a competitive edge, leveling the playing field for you. Join the conversation. Quasar Markets Live.
Good morning, Quasar Markets Live. It's Howard here with your pre-market prep today. Before we get into it, it's obviously been all about war, right? The war. That is pretty much the entire, 90% of the news right now is about that. And, or if it isn't, it's about the energy prices because of the war or other prices because of the war. So everything seems to battle down to that or boil into those few things. First place I'm looking here this morning that shows that pretty much is volatility index, right? The VIX. High price or high premium being paid due to current volatility. We got as high as 35.30 overnight or on the open. We've been sliding down since. So tensions, traders, I guess, were, jumped in that direction. And now we're sort of seeing the natural mean reversion to that. But again, elevated at 30, even if we were to come down into the middle of this zone of Friday zone, you're still at 25, which is still rather elevated. There is definitely no end in sight for the war, it looks like, especially with Khamenei's son being put in charge as the new leader. So that's going to ramp up the rhetoric, all that fun stuff. Rates continue to move to the upside. Short duration getting hit harder than long duration. So at least that does match up with what we would expect to see. The dollar, King dollar, is back. It broke above 100 briefly and now back down around the 99.26, but elevated. And it does look like traders are moving into the cash market. Gold is down about 1.24% and silver down about 62 basis points. So that's what I mean about that. It looks like, and we're going to get into the three indices in a second, but they're down. So if the major indices are down, most stocks are down. Treasury rates are up. The dollar is up the most basically, and silver and gold not doing much. It shows your money's moving into the dollar, in my opinion, for sure. So we are seeing people go to cash here. And then we mentioned gas and oil prices. I mean, they're at the lows of the session right now. WTI got as high as, looks like 112.58, and Brent as high as 113.73. Rumor mill, or at least actually, I think it was one of the traders that said he was on the wrong side of it on CNBC earlier today, that there was some serious short covering where folks were on the wrong side of this trade. And now that that's come off, you can see it again, a pretty big difference in, you know, a 10% drop to the downside, 15% drop to the downside here since 6 p.m., right? No, 9 p.m., excuse me. Then we have Bitcoin back up at 68K, right about where we left on Friday. 68K on Bitcoin, 2005 on Ethereum. So that's interesting because that started to pick up here over the last several hours. Also, we hadn't seen that strength. We'd seen weakness throughout the entire weakness throughout the entire weekend. And it really started to recover as Asian market hours opened, and we've seen that recovery now really start to ramp up. Key to this, that for me, is we had not seen buy-in during the Asian hours in general, so that's a strong, you know, push there. But most of the rhetoric over the weekend was fairly negative on, you know, crypto Twitter, on, you know, the crypto sort of centric news centers, coin desks, coin telegraphs, Bankless, all those type of places. It was a lot of doom and gloom. Fear and greed is back down below 20, so that's not good. ETF outflows were pretty big over Thursday and Friday, pretty much erasing the rest of the week's gains. So it looks like maybe that was retail buying in on IBIT, where we thought, or I thought, it was more institutionals because they folded their hands over the last 2 days. Is the 1 billion that's still there in the increase over the last 10 days, is that stronger hands, or do we see, you know, I'll be watching those ETF inflows and outflows today for sure when they're done at the end of the day to get a better read there. Other news has been, you know, the major stock and exchanges partnering with crypto exchanges for future. On Friday, we had this New York Stock Exchange parent company, ICE, partner with OKX, a large Asian crypto exchange. They invested a huge amount of money in there. And now we see that NASDAQ is partnering with Kraken. So, you know, again, more and more intersection of this in preparation. If you don't know, in the end of May, CME is going to launch perpetual future trading on 50 single stock names, 24/7 trading, very similar to what the crypto world already has. So it does seem like to lean on the expertise, which is the fact that crypto industry or crypto trading has had perpetual futures in place since 2016 and have a lot of expertise with it. The big exchanges are partnering. What is a bigger takeaway? They didn't partner with Coinbase. Now, ICE already had, or NASDAQ already has some partnerships with Coinbase on certain things. But they partnered on this decision or this move with Kraken in a big way. And as I said, New York Stock Exchange's parent company, ICE, with OKX, also pushing it. And the big part of it is they're going to have tokenized stocks on these exchanges sooner than later. And that's what this, you know, they're all sort of in a race now to get into this. You know, we'll see how, you know, we'll see as more and more of it comes out. The other markets, who do they roll up with? Is it, do they partner with more than one, or do they only partner with one? What do we see there? That will be a big part of what happens with crypto and everything else. Looking overseas to get some more idea of what our appetite is for risk. I'd be careful in the storage names today. I haven't looked at them. We'll take a look in 1 second. And that is because the KOSPI, which is the South Korean Stock Exchange Composite Index, down about 6% here in the pre-market. They're two biggest names that make up about 50%, Hyundai and Samsung chip storage companies. So we'll see how that relates. In fact, let's take a quick look here. So I usually check Seagate based on that, STX. Down about 2%, so a laggard there. You can check Western Digital, falls into the area there. WDC down about 2.75%, and SanDisk, which I always forget there, one SNDK, they're down about 2%. They were down 6.76 already on Friday. So again, almost a 9% loss in a couple of days there. So we do see that is playing into those sectors already. And it should probably play into the chip sector. So let's first check what NVIDIA is doing. NVIDIA down about another 1% here, getting back down towards that 170 level that, to me is extremely attractive when it comes to NVIDIA. What are the other chip sectors doing? Other sides of the chip sector. Give me 1 second here. And they're all laggards. So NVIDIA is actually faring better than most. You can see AVGO down about 1.36%, and the rest down about 1%. Nothing really. Marvell is the biggest laggard, but they were also up 18.5% almost on Friday after their earnings. So not surprising to see them down the most here today. But chip sector definitely under a little bit of pressure based on that. Also overseas, Hong Kong market through the Hang Seng Index down about 1.35% overnight. And Europe did not start off so strong either. The stocks, or the XXP, which is the stock 600 I track, down about 1.62%. And I forgot Japan, the Nikkei down about 1.87. So we are seeing, weakness across that sectors or all of the other world markets also. We'll keep an eye on that throughout the morning. As I mentioned, the Dow down about 1% now, and that's actually towards the highs of the pre-market trading. You can see here at 47,027. S&P through the ES minis trading at about 6681.50. That's down a little less than 1%. And the NASDAQ trading through the NASDAQ E-minis down a little over 1%. Technology still probably the worst sector performance so far at 24,408. And then let's hone in a little bit on the different sectors of the S&P to round out our sort of coverage of what I look at from a macro level in the morning. And we see energy is the only sector that is positive. Staples didn't go positive on Friday, doesn't look as positive today. Biggest laggards looks to be the material sector, actually is down pretty big, 1.5%. Financials down almost 1.5% also. And then real estate, consumer discretionary, technology are all down. Industrial all down more than 1% here again today. So, I don't have to do a lot of dissertation today or going back and forth to say at this point we are risk off as a start to our day. What am I going to look for areas of strength? I'm looking at energy names. I'm looking at defensive names. I'm looking at defense names. What am I avoiding, or what am I maybe looking to short? And we'll start to look through some of these names here in a second. Airlines and the cruise ships are probably going to be down. Beta names should be down. Crypto adjacent names should be down. Those are the names we'll look at to see if they are set for a bounce back here, or do we expect to see more tension out of the Middle East? And basically for me, I'll be watching oil and gas, and those stocks most of the day will be a big part of my day along, besides crypto. rumor on the street, or at least not even rumor on the street anymore, because I did see it again on CNBC earlier today, is the oil storage facilities in Iran. Does the U.S., NATO, whomever, not blow them up, but do they take control of them? So that would be a form of boots on the ground. I think that would really, really spook people, spook the market in general. So let's hope that is not the case. But markets are pricing that in a little bit here. Quite honestly, let's take a look at a couple of the names out there. So CVX obviously is a big place to start. Chevron, and they are up about 1%. They are fairly close to their 52-week highs. 190.41 they hit on Friday. They're at 191.86, so fairly close there. And now year to date they're up almost 25% here. So Chevron's had a nice run because of this. Exxon XOM up another 1% also here. Slated to open at 152.78, very close to its 52-week high, and again up 26% year to date. Other names to keep an eye on: APA, which is up 2% today. FANG, which is Diamondback, up about 2.23%. So keep that in mind. Another name sort of out of the beaten path to keep an eye on today that's been absolutely bombarded, that's making a nice little move to the upside here after shaking hands with Novo Nordisk, is HIMS and HERS, HIMS, up about 51, almost 52% in the pre-market trading. This is after Bloomberg reported that they had agreed to a truce with Novo Nordisk, and it basically they're going to continue to sell, I guess, their compounded version of semaglutide. So that is, positive for them. The truce comes at a time, Novo Nordisk has been under a lot of pressure lately too, NVO. So good for both of them, kind of, stop fighting, get over it, move forward, and do business. So trying to get back into that sort of mindset would be good there. I mentioned, and let's take a look here. I know the answers because I already looked at it, but airlines getting hit pretty hard here. Delta down another 3.41%. And you can see retracing here, coming back towards lows, going back, basically trying to erase all the gains we've seen since last August or so. Here today, definitely under more pressure, and not just them. It's not just Delta, it's American. Down another 3.4%, and United, UAL, down another 3.33%. And that isn't just the fuel costs that are hitting that, of course, or the disruptions to the Middle East. I saw, I don't know what airport it was, but one of the airports had was advising people to get in 6 hours before your flight because TSA agents are calling off as they're stopping getting paid here. So you never like to see that, of course. You want people to get paid, so that is starting to hit, the news now. So it is, hopefully that puts some pressure on the Senate and Congress to move forward and get that straightened out. Other sectors or names, it was an interesting list of of who was up this morning. A couple of Chinese names, or a Chinese name. King Soft Cloud Holdings up about 15% here today. Red Cat Holdings, another Chinese name, up about 6.5%. Live Nation is up 5.81%. That is on the news that they've come to a settlement. They won't have to sell Ticketmaster. They came to a settlement with the FTC. You do see metals. Some metals names are having a little bit of strength today. TMC. We talked about the energy names, FANG, F-A-N-G, doing it. Other Chinese names moving to the upside too. Lee Motors, L-I. EchoStar having a strong day, up 2.12%. Also, defense names, PTEN and Kratos, KTOS in the moving, the northern names. Archer Daniels, Midland, some, industrial names having a little strength. RTX, defense names. But that's really the only sectors. You've got very limited things that aren't either in the defense sector or defensive names that are moving to the upside. Leidos moving up, defense contractor name. Northern Grumman moving up, another defense name. Those are the things that are moving up, if anything. And then the laggards. So you got a couple of different things here going on. You have, again, the weakness in private credit affecting some companies. So let's look at a few of those. Apollo, APO. Down about 2% here. And again, that's now down about 25% year to date. Blackstone. BX down another 2.4%. And they're down 28%, almost 29% year to date. BlackRock wasn't hit as hard, but still down another 1.62%, and they're down almost 11%. So again, private credit, that crack seems to be deepening, or at least the threat of that crack deepening is definitely hitting those private debt company or those private equity companies that do a lot of credit. You can see here, BlackRock is back to trading at levels from May of last year. So it's, financials, it's private credit, because again, although it's still up, doing much better than that, but JP Morgan at 283 is pulled back from 335. And again, down, over 10% year to date. So the last 3 months has not been kind to, a lot of different sectors, to a lot of different big names in the markets. And the question is, when is it that time? And what I'll be hitting BigBeat up is, when does it start to be time to look for your long-term portfolio? We know he's been buying dips and trading this a lot. When does it become time? When do we get to the point, or how much lower does he think we go before the war is sort of over, or we get to some resolution there, I should say, and such, and we can start to see a move back to the upside? So that will definitely be a question that I have for him. Crude surged over 35% last week, biggest jumps in, years and years and years. There. So that's definitely going to be a case, going to watch that. Earnings, we've got some, some of the bigger names today after the bell. We have Hewlett Packard, I know. Tomorrow after the bell, we have Oracle. Before the bell, we have Kohl's. Wednesday does bring us CPI data we got to keep an eye on, so we'll be watching that. Thursday, we get some more retail names with Dollar General and Dick's before the bell. Ultra Beauty, and Adobe after earnings, after the bell. And then we've got on Friday, fourth quarter GDP data, January PCE price index, January job openings. So we got some data coming out there also. So we'll see what happens. And then, biotechs will be interesting to watch because with the FDA's vaccine chief stepping down, maybe some of these healthcare companies that have been beaten down because of the current administration, the current FDA's reversals, seemingly, if you listen to the healthcare companies out of nowhere, has hurt a lot of those stocks. So maybe that gives them the ability to bounce back here too. So that would be good to see. Otherwise, again, 90% of everything that I see on the news or that's being covered is really related to the war. I'm just seeing here, French President Macron, French deployment in Mediterranean. I need to see that. Hold it 1 second here. French deployment in Mediterranean Red Sea, Hormuz Strait will include 8 warship aircraft carriers and 2 helicopter carriers. So it looks like France, of all countries, now sending some folks or some of their troops to the Middle East. I'll have to ask BigBeat that one, but that would worry me that maybe this thing about them grabbing the area around where the oil storage spots are could have more to it. Yeah, and supply chain hasn't just gone down to oil and gas directly, but that actually has come and shifted to the chip sector, which has been hurt by the cost of energy and shipping costs that are expected to explode, of course, because of what's going on there. So markets are definitely in a wait and see mood right now. I said we should let's take a look at the cruise names. We know BigBeat was looking at RCL on Friday. You see CCL Carnival down another 3.68%. RCL is down about 3.3% here this morning. So those companies still also under a lot of pressure here this morning. And CLH is the other one I always take a look at. Yeah, down another 3.44%. So that part of the sector or industry getting hit pretty hard here this morning. Advanced declines down about negative 28.32, but quite honestly, that's been a move back to the upside compared from where it was earlier. Tick slightly negative. Mentioned that the volatility index is down is up about 7% from Friday, but down, although now moving back to the upside a little bit from where we were in the morning. So we are seeing that also. So markets are trying to digest what's going on for sure. Taking a look here now. Q's back down a little bit lower here, now down about 1.1%. S&P down about 1.02%, and the Dow down about 1.14%. Dollar is up about 0.5 percentage point here. Gold and silver down also this morning. Gold down about 1.52%, and silver down about 0.5 percentage point, back at 84. Those have been consolidating basically sideways last 4 or 5 days. So after taking the big step down on Tuesday of last week. They've traded mostly sideways. Copper's down about close to 1% also. Bitcoin continues to slide to the upside, so that's good to see. And Ethereum back above 2,000, but we could see some selling at the 9:30 open. We are about a half hour from the open here, so we need to keep an eye on that for sure. And looking at oil, WTI 98.35. Brent at 121, so still really elevated here. Although again, off of the highs by a significant amount, almost 15% off of the highs when it comes to Brent. And WTI, same type of scenario here, down, yeah, right around 15%. So both of them down about 15% from where they were when we opened up the markets late last night. Looking at the big names that I look at here for Quasar, Kratos is alphabetically the first one to be up in the green, up about 1.61%. Defense names are catching a bid. Mara, Bitcoin miner, up slightly here. That's a little interesting here, but pretty much flat, and there it goes, flat on the day. Same thing, MicroStrategy, pretty much flat. But that makes sense that like I said, Bitcoin's right around the price that we left on Friday. So it makes sense that those are right around the same price there. Defense names are definitely ones to keep an eye on here today. And that we'll be watching throughout the rest of the day. Okay, I'm not sure BigBeat's coming in here this morning, so without him here, I am going to step away. Let me just, bring you up on the latest news, the biggest things here. Normally him and I go over it. I was going to ask him, I'll give you just my opinions. Oil is definitely, I do think we're going to see something happen there with those, with the gas and oil storage in Iran. I do think that maybe that makes sense. That's why France is sending over some ships and some troops. Do we secure that to try to stop, from anyone from bombing it, mainly Israel and the U.S. in general? We don't want to bomb that stuff. We want to set up the next, if it is a regime change, we want to see and have a positive move there. So that's something to keep an eye on. They did name the son of the late Ayatollah as its new supreme leader. That is not, very strong here for the for peace. That was a step. That's not a moderate. That's not a move towards the U.S. That's a move away from the U.S. So that's my take there. And again, the president pointed out that he and Netanyahu will make the decision together as to when to end the strikes. So that will be interesting, but it's got everybody worried about. And as I mentioned towards the beginning, I do think a lot of folks are moving into the dollar right now. Gold and silver doesn't seem to be the hedge that's getting anything moving. I think the folks that were trading that are now trading oil, because again, you can get that on the perps on, I'll have to look at Hyperliquid, but I have seen it moving up volume on obviously the oil trading. So those folks that are chasing volatility, that's what they're chasing. The VIX up at 31.22, still rather elevated so far. And that's so far what we're looking at when it comes to there. On the crypto side, ETF outflows on Thursday and Friday erased a decent portion of what had come in, makes us back a little bit negative, shows that those ETF inflows maybe were a little bit more retail than institutional. Good morning there, Mr. Flanagan. So we'll watch that. but Bitcoin and Ethereum both back up, or at least they were a little bit above where we left on Friday. So after having a weak weekend, yeah, they're still squeezing to the upside. I will say, though, we were set, if we did see upward movement, for a little bit of a short squeeze there. So we'll go from there. Like I said, I'm not sure where BigBeat is this morning. He isn't here, though. So that's all I have for everybody. So I am going to end the stream, and we'll see if he picks it back up here in a few minutes. Everybody have a fantastic trading day. Watch those energy names. If WTI and crude pick back up, those are going to be names that take off. And otherwise, defense names are moving forward. And look again for maybe a bounce back across tech and others if we can get some positive news out of the Middle East. So for me and everybody else, have a great day.